and the first of which is Mike Matei.
How's it going? You have to bear with me, I just have something I wrote here, so I'm just going to be reading from this. I met James Rolfe one night at a small party, at a small get-together at my apartment in college. We were playing a drinking game with a group of friends, as college kids will do, as many of you are doing right now. And of course, we drank more than expected. James was feeling very sick, and I could see in his eyes that he was about to throw up. And so instead of having him upchuck on my carpet, I acted quickly and I had him throw up into a thing I grabbed, which was a metal Pac-Man trash can. I moved it over, and somehow he missed the metal trash can, and he threw up all over my arms. And we've worked together ever since. It was in college where I first showed James things like the severely non-functional Atari 5200 controller and the infamous Atari form games. And let me tell you, there's still nothing as fun as screwing a naked Indian chick up against a cactus in glorious 4-bit resolution. I remember one day we were playing Castlevania, the original, with our friend Lucas, who did the animated Full House Tournament Fighter parody that you might have seen. He mentioned how strange it was that Simon Belmont would eat old turkey legs that had been sitting around inside a stone wall, which we all found hilarious. The seeds of the nerd humor were sprouting. But while the underlying concepts of the show started earlier than 2004 for me, what we're celebrating here today is the creation of the first videos starring the character that you've all come to love. Castlevania II, Simon's Quest, and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Now, I always liked drawing comics when I was a kid, and I wanted to get into the comics field. I read interviews from famous artists like Charles Schultz about how to get into the business. And one thing that seemed universal amongst comic strip creators was to always make your story relatable to the audience. Finding common ground with your audience is what makes it hit home with them. I think that's largely where the appeal of the nerd came from and why it's become such a phenomenon initially. While your grandmother would have no clue what Dodongo disliked smoke means, every gamer instantly gets a picture in their mind. So when the nerd eventually hit YouTube, it was like a tidal wave of instantly relatable nostalgia, at least to the now grown-up kids from our generation. Right around that time, James had asked to borrow the Mega Man games from me, and he was a big Mega Man fan. He wanted to try and beat them all. So we went through my NES collection. I had about 400 of them at the time. Yeah, most of which I got from Funko-Land, if anybody remembers Funko-Land. While going through the stacks, he came upon Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. He proceeded to then tell me how he rented that game from Blockbuster Video when he was a kid and he wanted to try it again. The next thing I knew, he came over to my house with another VHS tape and a new Bad NES Games video. It was called Bad NES Games originally. This time, James was actually on camera wearing a white button-down shirt. Now you have to remember, James was my friend all throughout college, so I knew James as James, not the character of the nerd. And when he first showed me the Dr. Jekyll video, I was barely paying attention to what he was saying. The whole time I was just thinking in my head, oh my God, my friend is such a nerd. Look at that shirt. And it wasn't until the next day that it dawned on me that James usually wears heavy metal shirts like Black Sabbath and that kind of thing. So the white dress shirt that he had on purpose was for the video, and I was very relieved that he wasn't a huge dork. So that was my reaction to the first two videos. Some time passed, about a year before the third video finally happened. So now we're at 2005. James and I had a job together, which we both hated. And in our spare time, we had been working on an animated parody of The Wizard of Oz entitled The Wizard of Oz 3, Dorothy Goes to Hell. And that's where Shit Pickle and Super Mecha Death Christ originated. The point is, the Bad NES Games project was on hold for a little while because of the Wizard of Oz parody and the editing job that we had. And actually, there was no plans for there to be any more of the nerd episodes. But one day, we were at my place, once again, reliving our past with some crappy old games, and we played The Karate Kid on NES. And James made an episode about that. Bad NES games had now become a trilogy, and that was intended to be the last of those videos. The Karate Kid video was a hybrid of the first two videos, combining the directly captured footage and James as a nerd in the white t-shirt. It was here where I became a fan of what James was doing. I thought the video was so hilarious that I begged him to do more, and it took a while to convince him because, as I said, he thought of it as a trilogy. I kept asking him, and eventually he gave in and said he'll do another episode, probably just to get me to shut the fuck up about it. He asked me which one I wanted him to review, and from a stack of about 15 games, I picked Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and this is where I became more directly involved with the creation of the episodes. I started bringing all of my retro consoles to his apartment so that the character appeared to be a serious game collector as well. I was that into the idea that I just started giving my personal game systems. The idea of the show was more exciting to me than having some dusty consoles laying around my apartment. Up until this point, the videos were only available as downloadable QuickTime movies on James' website, cinemassacre.com, which was pretty inconvenient. Fortunately, it was then that I found out about YouTube, which was in its infancy, and I created a channel to host the videos. I named it James Nintendo Nerd because at the time, we were still batting around ideas for a name. Remember, this is before the Angry Video Game Nerd, the name for it, even existed. Some of the other names that we had been thinking about including were the Pissed Off PlayStation Poindexter for Sony PlayStation reviews. I'm sure we're all glad that it ended up being the Angry Video Game Nerd. Anyhow, once it hit YouTube, we found out that I wasn't the only fan. There was many other fans that felt the same way about it that I did, and the rest, as they say, is history. And now I'd like to bring up Bad Luck Bootsy.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you all for being here. Many of you may know me as Bad Luck Bootsy, but contrary to my name, I've had the great fortune of knowing my friend James Rolfe for about 15 years. I was at a house party during my sophomore year in college, and the night was coming to a close. For whatever reason, James and I were one of the last ones awake, and since we were both film majors, we struck up a conversation about our common love of the horror genre. He went on to tell me how he made about 80 plus short films in his life at that point, and that the majority were campy horror films. He excitedly rushed across the street to his old apartment and grabbed a VHS copy of his pride and joy of that time, Kung Fu Werewolf from Outer Space. We sat there and watched it from the beginning to the end, and I knew for sure that I met a new friend, one unlike any of the others that I had met in my life prior to that evening. We would continue to share our films together for years. This is also important. I've known Mr. Mike Matei here since we were about 10 years old. Mike's one of my best friends, and we share a really fucked up sense of humor. Mike and I were roommates in college, and so when I threw a party one night and James showed up, I should have suspected that these two guys would form an unbreakable bond of absurdity, sheer absurdity. From that point on, James was a frequent visitor to our apartment. I'd always come home from a party or from my girlfriends or something to find James and Mike reliving their childhood memories through old school video games on Mike's consoles in the living room. Clearly, as you can see, not much has changed. They were just smart enough to find a way to make a living happen. After graduation, I moved back to my parents' house, and James landed an editing job about 15 minutes away from me, so we were able to keep in touch. This was good because whenever I'd see him, we'd have movies to share, and he was always showing me stuff that he was working on. The Mexican Mummy, my personal favorite, Monkey Cheese. Brilliant, I'm still waiting for that feature-length movie. I don't know. Get the Indiegogo started on that. And he also showed me a new video that didn't have a particular title. I brought the VHS tape over to Mike's house, who was also living nearby, and we sat down to watch what would later be known as the first Angry Video Game Nerd episode. Of the vast sea that makes up James Rolfe's filmography, I knew immediately that this was the best one that he had ever made. Sincerely, I knew it was my favorite. I had tears, running down my face. It was hilarious. I remember thinking to myself, who the fuck would sit down and create a comprehensive review of the flaws in a Nintendo game that came out over 15 years earlier? Who else, really? The video was uploaded to YouTube, which was brand new at the time and was starting to explode with popularity. Unsurprisingly, the Simon's Quest video caught on like wildfire. I say unsurprisingly because I knew that James had brilliantly captured the zeitgeist of our generation in less than 10 minutes. Finally, though, 10 years ago, there was a voice expressing our discontent in these products that we were fed as kids. Finally, companies, albeit video game companies, were being held accountable for the crimes that they committed. Thank you, James, for calling bullshit on them. Thank you for shining a light on consumer exploitation, right? Round of applause for that. You've opened the eyes of generations behind us, and you've told them not to stand for that shit, really. And you've done it in the only way that you know how, with biting humor. James has been such an influence on our culture that it is almost impossible to appreciate it. I mean, everything on YouTube is a review of something now, really, and I sincerely think James is the grandfather of that. There's one thing that puts James ahead of the rest, his sincerity. He's an incredibly honest guy, and I think it comes out in his videos, and I think that's why you're all here today, because you like the guy, not just the character. And so thank you all for coming. It's great to see you all out here. You've all been very kind to us this weekend. And James, congratulations on 10 years of The Nerd. I'm proud to be a very small part of the history. Now, in the words of Mick Jagger, let's rock this mother to the max. I'd like to bring up the great and very talented Kyle Justin. Thank you.
Hey guys, thanks for coming out. I also have a little prepared something. This is obviously, I'm not reading off this right now, this is obviously a huge deal. I mean, between the work of Mike and James, it's just amazing. 10 years ago, you're coming from YouTube to a movie. I mean, and it's going to be a pretty amazing movie as well. So I am going to open up with just a little joke. So when I first met James, instead of the new sideburns that we see here, he had a mustache. It was kind of like a bird just took a dump on his upper lip. And I really can't talk because I had the bird crap mustache too. It's kind of a rite of passage for middle school kids, high school kids. So that's pretty much my only joke. I'm married. My wife made me take out all of my humor, so I'm gonna go home and yell at her. 'Cause I'm a bastard too. So James and I first met at a small little cafe or pizza restaurant, something like that, in Center City, Philadelphia, and we met to find out if we'd make good roommates. And there's another story behind that, but we could talk about that another time. But the interesting thing is, we were almost about 20 years old, and we met with our moms. So both our moms were there. I mean, we were nerds from the very beginning. So I don't know why our moms were there. We were like 30, 50 years old. No, it was 20. It was around, this was our second year of college, so we did become roommates. He wasn't there that often, but again, there's another story with that. But we were roommates at the University of the Arts. Quickly, James told me about this idea to film a mockumentary based on Rocky. I didn't really have any experience, but I was excited to do something different and new. So we traveled the landscape of Center City, Philadelphia, from the Art Museum steps to the unique South Philadelphia neighborhoods to film this project. During the montage running scene, James had me run along the side of like a highway. I guess it was 76 or the entrance to a highway. Cars were going like 80 miles per hour. And the interesting thing about this at the time was that I got the impression that James wouldn't do it. So what I mean is, he's like, "Sure, Kyle, go run in the traffic. I'll film. I'll be back here. I'll say that. You just go run." And he's just probably thinking like, well, if he gets run over, I'll make some really cool footage. Like, that'll be really gory and fucking awesome. Yeah. I'll put some Metallica music behind it, and like, it'll be fucking awesome. A few years later, a couple small projects later, James told me about the Angry Nintendo Nerd, which obviously there's a lot behind that Mike went over. And he told me about that, and I said, well, can I write, do you think we could try to maybe write a theme song for it? So we got together one day, and I wrote a theme song for him. Do you want to hear it? Maybe? We're doing like the full version here. It's gonna take you back to the past to play some shitty games to suck it. You'd rather have a buffalo take a diarrhea dump in his ear. You'd rather eat the rotten asshole of a roadkill skunking down it with beer. He's the angriest gamer you've ever heard. He's the angry Nintendo nerd. He's the angry Atari Sega nerd. He's the angry video gamer. When you turn on your TV, make sure it's tuned to Channel 3. He's got a nerdy shirt and a pocket pouch, although I've never seen him write anything down. He's got a power glove and a filthy mouth. Armed with this zapper, he will tear these games down. He's the angriest gamer you've ever heard. He's the angry Nintendo nerd. He's the angry Atari Sega nerd. He's the angry video game nerd. Plays the worst games of all time. Horrible abominations of mankind. Make him so mad he can spit. Say cowabunga. They rip you off and don't care one bit. But this nerd, he don't forget it. Why can't a turtle swim? Why can't I land a plane? They got a quick buck for this shitload of buck. The characters' names are wrong. They got the password. What the fuck? Why is the password so long? Video game. Don't really play that song that often, so I always have to kind of be reminded a little bit. I do have a little bit more to say. Let's see here. Now we fast forward. It's the 10th anniversary of the Angry Video Game Nerd. It's a big year. James has his movie coming out. He's just announced theaters all over the country, most of which sold out within 48 hours, some within 24 hours. This is huge, guys, and this is all because of the fans. You know, this is because of Mike's hard work, this is because of James' hard work, this is because of a lot of friends that have helped throughout the years. This is it's really a huge deal, and it's amazing. From conversations I've had with a few people that have worked for Cinemaster, at Cinemaster, and just a handful of people, it seems to me, these are all my kind of my vantage point, to me that everybody's number one priority at Cinemaster is above all to stay true to their dreams, to stay true to their artistic integrity, and to give you guys the stuff that is interesting, fun, and most importantly, give you guys stuff interesting, fun, and most importantly, unique. A unique product. I believe what makes Cinemaster different is that will never change. The fact that it's unique. I personally believe life is a constant evolution, and while you may not know exactly what is going to happen tomorrow, it will be something worth waiting for. James may have killed me behind the fucking couch, you fucking bastard. But James is a really bright guy. He's a really hard worker, and he's an out-of-the-box thinker. More importantly, he's a nerd. most importantly, he's a movie-making rebel with movie-making ideas for a new generation. The things that have happened for James and Cinemassacre don't surprise me. Knowing James from my vantage point for the last roughly about 15 years as well, I've always believed something big would happen. Probably couldn't put my finger on it, but I knew something was special. Now, 10 years have passed since James' first AVGN episode, and nothing could have happened without the dedicated fans like you guys. Who knows what the next 10 years will unfold. Whatever it may be, I think it will be inspiring. I believe the AVGN movie will be epic, but I also believe there's a lot more to come. And the only limit for any of us is our imagination. I'm excited to be a part of Cinemassacre's future, and I'd like to congratulate James on this landmark 10th anniversary.
Yeah, I don't know what to say about that. Thanks, guys. I remember when the videos first started circulating, it was, they were on VHS tapes, only a few people, and I remember I showed it to Bootsy one time, and I guess you might have shown some of your friends, because I remember one time we were at, I think it was your house, I know it was Mike's house maybe, but we were watching a horror movie or something, some crappy horror movie. I think one of your friends brought it up to me, and he said something like, I think we were just talking about new video games, and that new video games that would come out, and he goes, oh, I hear they're coming out with a new Dr. Jekyll Mr. Hyde game. And that was like his way of letting me know what he saw. And that was the first time it connected to me that somebody else saw the video and thought it was funny. And then you fast forward 10 years and you got a whole room full of people here, so it's just crazy. And we're going to do something special right now. We're actually going to watch the first 2 episodes from 2004 on the original VHS tape, or at least on one of the oldest surviving VHS tape that exists. And I'd like to show the tape, actually. Here we go, this. And it is labeled in my handwriting 10 years ago, the worst NES. Eventually it will be called Bad NES. Actually, you know what? Hang on one second. This is the Cinemassacre Gold Collection. These were the original tapes that, the first time it was like mass copied. And yeah, it was 4 different collections. One was called Heroes, which was like movies like about like just more sort of superhero kind of movies. But then these ones were the Quickies, which were just short films, like films that were like 1 or 2 minutes long. And then Misfits, which were just these weird kind of movies that I'd never show again. And then the Epics, which were more of like Jersey Odyssey, Cinemaphobia, Curse of the Caliber's Grave, Cinemassacre 101. So it was like more of the ones I was more proud of, I guess. But the Quickies, it had these 2 at the end. There was Simon's Quest and Jekyll and Hyde, but they were both called Bad NES games, which was before the term Angry Nintendo Nerd even came into existence. But yeah, so this one right here, has not been played in 10 years, but we're going to watch it. This one-time exclusive event. So, who's got a question?
Favorite games ever? Your favorite game ever?
Probably my favorite game ever is probably Zelda: Link to the Past.
Now this is going to seem cliche because mine is The Legend of Zelda on NES. I grew up playing Atari, but I mean, my favorite video game of all time is Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3.
What's your favorite video game soundtrack? Your favorite video game music?
There's a lot of good ones. I really love the soundtrack to the Castlevania games, the early ones. All of them, really. Most of them have really good soundtracks. But I think my favorite, if I was to really get specific, I think the first stage in Super Contra is really good.
Mega Man 2 soundtrack. I don't think this counts for what you meant, but I gotta give a shout out to the Grand Theft Auto Vice City soundtrack.
Oh yeah.
I think for me, Streets of Rage 2, I love that. I'm going back to that kangaroo for Atari and
What's the crossword at the end of the Godzilla video?
What's the what in the Godzilla video?
The crossword at the end of the Godzilla video.
It was skunt, but I just made it up. I mean, it was kind of like, I don't know, like just some made up word. So yeah.
Like you did with your Back to the Future, Top Gun, and Dr. Jekyll Mr. Hyde short, you revisited those. Do you plan on going back to those older ones?
To revisit them.
Like Silver Surfer or Rambo or Die Hard?
Yeah, I mean, most of those games I'd rather not revisit. I mean, I think all the major ones that I wanted to do, the ones that I wasn't satisfied with, that I could have gone further with the game, I've already done most of those. So I don't know, maybe in a while, maybe I'll start going back to some other ones. But there's so many other games I haven't done, and I'm probably mostly going to be doing, you know, games I haven't done.
What is your guilty pleasure?
What is my guilty pleasure game? There's an LJN game, Royal Rumble on Super NES, and I remember it's like, it can get really monotonous. You just throw the guys against the ropes and you just keep, you know, doing the same moves over and over. That grappling thing goes on forever, but I used to love that game, so I don't know, maybe that's a guilty pleasure. Hey.
You shit on a lot of things in your videos. What do you use for the shit effects?
The shit effect, what have I used for the shit effect? It's peanut butter, chocolate syrup. Chunky peanut butter, you gotta have chunky peanut butter. Yeah. Sometimes flour, other things you could add to the texture, but you know, really, it's like the main ingredients is a chocolate syrup and peanut butter.
Of all the games that you play, which one would you be most interested in seeing like fans try to fix in like ROM hack or something?
Oh, okay. Of all the games I've done, like which ones would I be interested in seeing a fan like ROM hack of, seeing it like redone, like seeing it fixed? I mean, I guess the obvious one is Dr. Jekyll Mr. Hyde. See, how could that be fixed? But I almost feel like I don't want to see that fixed, because that's the way that game always is to me. I don't know, can you think of one?
The game that you fixed?
Yeah, like imagine just fixing a game.
Probably any game that you've ever reviewed.
Probably any game I've ever done, I guess. Yeah.
By your request to do a lot of reviews for video games, is there any game that you wanted to review but didn't?
Is there any that I wanted to do that I didn't? Like any that are on the waiting list, or just
That's the ones that you were planning on doing.
that just aborted them, just didn't do them? Yeah, actually there's a Micro Machines, I remember, was one off the top of my head. Micro Machines, it was an unlicensed game on NES. And I remember I wanted to do the whole video in, you know, the commercials, like you know, the Micro Machines with a really fast voice. So it was gonna be the fastest nerd video ever because I do it in a really, really fast voice. But the game wasn't really that bad, so it didn't really work. There wasn't enough to say about it.
How did you come up with the idea of Bullshit Man?
Oh, Bullshit Man. It was like making him a character or just a show in general. Let's see, well, the show started, and then eventually, when the show started, it was almost just the same as the nerd. It was the same voice, I didn't change my voice or anything, but it was ranting about just generic stuff. And then eventually it got kind of confusing, where it was like, well, wait, am I the nerd in those videos, or am I just me, or like what is it? It's just some kind of extension of it. And then I decided, well, it needs its own character. It needs to be like, distinguish it. Okay, there's the nerd, then there's Board James, and then there's the Bullshit Man. And they're all the same kind of thing, but they're just different divisions of it. And then I just thought, okay, well, now that I'm the Bullshit Man, what does he look like? So I had a lot of time to think about it. And then I used all that time to come to the conclusion that he's just a man with bullshit on his face. Yeah, just so much bullshit happened to him in his life that eventually he became bullshit. Yeah.
Your shit pickle, how did you make him like, how did you train him?
How did Shit Pickle come about? That was we were at a Wendy's one day, and we were eating a burger, and there was a pickle on the burger, and we were having a discussion about The Wizard of Oz 3.
Yes. The Wendy's at 11th and Spruce in Philadelphia, that is the birthplace of Shit Pickle. It was, well, we were coming up with characters for the Wizard of Oz spoof we were doing, and in every Wizard of Oz movie, Dorothy had some weird kind of sidekick, and well, first it was a dog, first it was Toto, and then Return to Oz, it was this chicken, and then we always joked, well, if there was a third Wizard of Oz, who would the sidekick be, and we decided it would be Shibbit.
How long did it take for you to grow up at his house to then work together?
I don't think very well. It was before work ever existed. It was just like college at that point. This was like 2001.
We made videos in college together, but it wasn't work. You know?
Yeah.
We made a video called "Came from Beyond the Toilet," where James had this monster shit all over me. But that wasn't work. You know, I didn't really start working for him until Godzilla-thon, I'd say.
Mario Segali, man, that was one of the first videos.
Yeah, I had James play like creator of Mario, or not the creator of Mario, but his landlord, like Miyamoto's landlord. And James, it's on the website, you can see it. It's called The Alternate History of Mario.
Yeah, that was back in college. Mike was one of the first people I remember to have an Atari Jaguar and a 3DO. And I was like, who the hell has that? So we'll do one more. So I think let me get somebody. I don't think I got you before. Yeah.
Are you gonna make any more James videos?
Oh yeah. You know what? And this is the first convention that Bootsy's ever been at, by the way. So this is what Bootsy's been doing. The first time you see the three of us. And actually, I'm sorry I asked you the last question, but yes, I ever since, I don't think I'll ever make a Board Games episode as good as the Dream Phone one again. It was such a perfect way to go out, but that wasn't meant to really be the end. It was meant to be a break. But I have a whole, other season of them planned out where we have all these board games picked out that we want to do. And now the series has such a great new, fresh, there's such a new fresh take on the character because now Board James is kind of a sketchy kind of guy, and like he's almost like Norman Bates. He's the Norman Bates of board games now, and you know, we don't know if he killed his friends or not, and we really wanted to roll with that and keep on going, and I have a whole like I said, a whole season planned, but basically everything just got so delayed because of the movie. And as the movie began to take more and more time, I was like, okay, I really just have to postpone this again. And I'm still planning to make them, but I just don't know when they're going to be. It's probably I probably have to start on them like this fall at the earliest, so I don't know. But I'm really disappointed in having to postpone them because I was really, really excited to do more Board Games episodes. It's such a fresh idea, and I'd love to keep doing them and do more. So eventually we'll get back to them. Yes, anyway, that's it. Thanks for coming to the 10th anniversary celebration.